What if the reason you cannot stop thinking about someone is not because you are unable to let go, but because a part of your psyche already knows something your conscious mind refuses to see? And what if the distance between you is not proof of rejection at all? What if it is the final psychological barrier standing between longing and transformation? Stay with me, because what Carl Jung discovered about the unconscious may completely change how you interpret this connection. Have you ever noticed how certain people leave your thoughts for a few hours, perhaps even a few days, and then suddenly return with astonishing force? Not through effort, not through memory, but as if something deeper pulls them back into awareness. If this insight resonates with you so far, take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your experience in the comments. Your story may help someone else understand a connection they have struggled to make sense of. One of the most misunderstood experiences in human psychology is the inability to stop thinking about a particular person. Most people assume this persistent focus is simply a sign of attraction, attachment, or emotional dependency. Carl Jung's perspective invites us to look much deeper. He believed that beneath conscious awareness exists a vast unconscious realm that influences thoughts, emotions, dreams, and relationships in ways we rarely recognize. When a specific person repeatedly occupies the mind, it may indicate that something within the unconscious has been activated. The unconscious bond is not necessarily a mystical connection, nor does it automatically prove that two people are destined to be together. Rather, it suggests that the psyche has identified something meaningful in the relationship. The mind continuously returns to this individual because they symbolize qualities, emotions, or possibilities that hold psychological importance. Their presence becomes connected to deeper layers of the self, making it difficult to simply forget them through logic or willpower alone. Jung observed that meaningful relationships often function as mirrors. Certain individuals awaken dormant aspects of personality that have remained hidden for years. They may reflect confidence that has not yet been developed, vulnerability that has been suppressed, or emotional needs that have gone unacknowledged. Because these qualities exist beneath conscious awareness, the person who activates them can feel unusually significant. Thoughts of them arise unexpectedly because the unconscious continues drawing attention toward what it considers unfinished inner work. This process can create a sense of invisible connection even when there is little or no contact. Physical distance does not necessarily weaken the psychological impact because the bond operates through symbols, emotions, memories, and projections stored within the psyche. The conscious mind may focus on the person, but the deeper psychological process is often centered on self-discovery. The individual becomes a catalyst that triggers reflection, growth, and emotional awareness. Dreams, recurring memories, and spontaneous thoughts frequently emerge during such experiences because the unconscious communicates through images and emotional impressions rather than direct explanations. The psyche repeatedly presents the same figure in order to emphasize an unresolved lesson or hidden aspect of personal development. Until that lesson is understood, the mind may continue returning to the same emotional focus. From a Jungian perspective, the persistence of these thoughts should not immediately be interpreted as a message about another person's feelings. Instead, it reveals that a significant psychological process is unfolding beneath the surface of awareness, drawing attention toward dimensions of the self that are seeking recognition, integration, and deeper understanding. Carl Jung believed that many of the emotions people experience in relationships are shaped by a psychological process known as projection. Projection occurs when qualities, desires, expectations, or unconscious contents that exist within the individual are unconsciously placed onto another person. Instead of recognizing these hidden elements as part of themselves, people perceive them as belonging entirely to the other person. This process is one of the primary reasons certain individuals become impossible to forget, and why emotional intensity can feel far greater than the actual circumstances of the relationship might justify. When someone captures the imagination in a powerful way, it is often because they have become a screen onto which unconscious material is projected. The individual may possess certain traits that trigger this process, but the emotional force comes largely from what the observer unconsciously contributes. A person begins to represent ideals, hopes, dreams, and longings that extend far beyond their actual personality. The mind fills in gaps, creating a symbolic image that carries tremendous psychological weight. This explains why thinking about someone can become an almost constant experience. The psyche is not merely responding to the individual themselves. It is responding to everything that has been unconsciously attached to them. They become associated with happiness, fulfillment, emotional safety, purpose, or personal transformation. Because these needs are deeply rooted within the unconscious, thoughts about the person acquire an intensity that logic struggles to control. Jung observed that projection often creates a feeling of fascination. The individual seems unusually special, mysterious, or uniquely important. Their actions are analyzed in great detail, their words carry extraordinary significance, and their presence appears to influence emotional states far more than expected. This fascination occurs because the unconscious recognizes its own hidden contents reflected in the other person. What feels like complete focus on someone else is often a hidden encounter with neglected aspects of the self. Distance frequently strengthens this process rather than weakening it. When direct interaction is limited, the imagination gains greater freedom to construct symbolic meanings. The less information available, the more space the unconscious has to project its desires and expectations. The person becomes larger than life, occupying a place in the psyche that extends beyond ordinary reality. The emotional intensity generated by projection is real, even when the projected image differs from the actual individual. The feelings are genuine because they originate from authentic psychological needs and desires. However, growth occurs when a person begins recognizing that much of the fascination points inward rather than outward. The qualities admired, desired, or pursued often reveal hidden dimensions of personal potential that are seeking expression, awareness, and conscious integration within the developing personality. One of Carl Jung's most influential ideas was the concept of the anima and animus, archetypal forces that exist within the unconscious mind. Jung proposed that every individual carries an inner image of the complementary psychological principle. This inner figure develops through personal experiences, cultural influences, dreams, emotions, and unconscious patterns accumulated throughout life. Although hidden from ordinary awareness, it plays a powerful role in attraction, relationships, and the persistent thoughts that arise around certain people. When someone enters life and strongly resonates with this unconscious image, the reaction can be immediate and profound. The connection often feels different from ordinary attraction, because it touches layers of the psyche that extend beyond conscious preference. The person seems familiar even when they are relatively unknown. Their presence evokes emotions that feel ancient, meaningful, and difficult to explain rationally. Jung believed this occurs because the unconscious recognizes characteristics that resemble the inner archetypal image it has carried for years. This process can create an intense emotional focus. The individual is no longer perceived solely as a separate person, but also as a symbolic representation of something deeply rooted within the psyche. Thoughts repeatedly return to them because they have activated psychological material that was previously dormant. They become associated with hidden desires, unrealized potential, emotional healing, creativity, spiritual growth, or a sense of completeness that the unconscious seeks to achieve. The anima and animus are not merely romantic concepts. They represent important pathways towards psychological wholeness. When these archetypes are projected onto another person, the resulting attraction often feels overwhelming because the individual appears to embody qualities that are missing or underdeveloped within the self. The unconscious mistakenly assumes that fulfillment exists entirely outside, rather than recognizing that these qualities must eventually be integrated internally. This is why certain people remain in the mind long after conversations have ended or physical distance has increased. The psyche continues engaging with the symbolic meaning attached to them. The person serves as a bridge between conscious awareness and deeper unconscious content. Each thought, memory, or emotional reaction becomes part of a larger process through which hidden aspects of personality seek recognition. Jung emphasized that the ultimate purpose of such experiences is not endless longing, but greater self-understanding. the attraction points toward qualities that deserve conscious development. The admiration, fascination, and emotional intensity reveal psychological energies that belong not only to the other person, but also to the individual experiencing them. As awareness grows, the projection gradually weakens, and the symbolic significance becomes clearer. What first appeared to be an irresistible fixation is often revealed as an invitation from the unconscious to discover neglected dimensions of identity, emotional depth, inner balance, and psychological completeness. One of the most difficult truths to understand in deep emotional connections is that distance does not always indicate a lack of feeling. From a Jungian perspective, distance can sometimes serve an important psychological purpose. Carl Jung believed that every individual is engaged in a lifelong process called individuation, the journey toward becoming a complete and integrated human being. This process requires confronting unconscious fears, developing hidden strengths, and bringing fragmented aspects of the personality into harmony. When a relationship becomes psychologically significant, it often intersects with this journey in ways that are not immediately obvious. Many people assume that if two individuals care about one another, closeness should naturally follow, yet Jung observed that the psyche does not always prioritize comfort or immediate fulfillment. Instead, it seeks growth. When a connection has the potential to transform someone at a deep level, the unconscious may create resistance because change is rarely easy. The closer a person comes to confronting hidden aspects of themselves, the stronger the internal tension can become. Distance often emerges during periods when important psychological work remains unfinished. The individual may not consciously understand why they hesitate, withdraw, or feel conflicted. On the surface, the reasons may appear practical or circumstantial. Beneath those explanations, however, the unconscious may be responding to fears that have not yet been acknowledged. Fear of vulnerability, fear of emotional exposure, fear of rejection, or fear of losing an established identity can all contribute to the creation of distance. Jung believed that meaningful relationships frequently act as catalysts for self-discovery. A significant connection can illuminate strengths and weaknesses that were previously hidden. It may expose insecurities that have been carefully avoided or reveal emotional wounds that have never fully healed. As these unconscious contents rise toward awareness, the psyche may instinctively seek protection. Distance becomes a way of maintaining stability while deeper psychological adjustments take place. This does not mean that separation is always beneficial or that every distant relationship is destined to become closer. Rather, it highlights the possibility that distance may sometimes reflect an internal struggle rather than an absence of emotional significance. The tension created by separation can force individuals to examine themselves more honestly. Questions about identity, purpose, emotional needs, and personal values often become impossible to ignore. Through this process, the connection serves a purpose beyond companionship. It becomes part of the individual's psychological development. The longing, uncertainty, and reflection generated by the distance encourage greater self-awareness. Jung viewed such experiences as opportunities for growth because they push the individual toward a deeper understanding of unconscious motivations, unresolved conflicts, hidden fears, emerging strengths, and the continuing journey toward greater psychological wholeness and self-realization. Carl Jung believed that one of the greatest obstacles to meaningful human connection is not the absence of love or affection, but the fear of psychological transformation. Most people think they fear rejection, loss, or disappointment. While these fears certainly exist, Jung suggested that an even deeper fear often operates beneath conscious awareness: the fear of becoming a different person. Every significant relationship has the potential to change the way an individual sees themselves, understands their life, and relates to the world. Because of this, powerful connections frequently awaken resistance alongside attraction. When a person enters life and begins to occupy a special place within the psyche, they often activate parts of the self that have remained dormant for years. Hidden desires emerge, emotional walls begin to weaken, and long-suppressed needs move closer to conscious awareness. Although this process can be exciting, it can also feel threatening. The familiar identity that has provided stability may suddenly seem inadequate. The individual senses that embracing the connection fully could require profound internal change. The unconscious mind often values security more than growth. Even when growth would ultimately be beneficial, the psyche may resist because change introduces uncertainty. A person may feel drawn towards someone while simultaneously creating emotional distance. They may think about the connection constantly but avoid taking meaningful steps forward. This contradiction can be confusing because the conscious mind experiences longing while the unconscious mind attempts to preserve existing psychological structures. Jung observed that transformation frequently begins when hidden aspects of personality are forced into awareness. Significant relationships have a unique ability to expose these concealed elements. In the presence of a meaningful connection, unresolved fears, insecurities, and emotional wounds often become impossible to ignore. Someone who appears confident may suddenly discover fears of abandonment. Someone who values independence may uncover a hidden need for closeness. Someone who believes they understand themselves completely may realize that important parts of their personality have never been explored. These discoveries can create inner conflict. The individual senses that moving closer to the connection requires confronting truths that have long remained hidden. The challenge is not simply about another person. It is about facing unfamiliar dimensions of oneself. Because the unconscious prefers predictability, it may generate hesitation, confusion, or withdrawal as a way of avoiding this confrontation. Distance often develops in such situations because transformation demands psychological courage. Remaining in familiar patterns feels safer than entering unknown emotional territory. Yet the connection continues to occupy the mind because the unconscious recognizes its importance. The relationship becomes a symbol of growth, representing possibilities that extend beyond ordinary attraction. The emotional intensity persists because the psyche understands that something valuable lies on the other side of fear, uncertainty, resistance, self-discovery, personal evolution, and the gradual emergence of a more complete and authentic sense of self. Carl Jung introduced the concept of synchronicity to describe meaningful coincidences that appear connected not through direct cause and effect, but through shared psychological significance. He became fascinated by moments when external events seemed to mirror internal experiences in ways that felt too precise or emotionally relevant to dismiss as mere chance. In the context of a deep emotional connection, synchronicities often become especially noticeable. People report thinking intensely about someone moments before receiving unexpected news about them, encountering repeated symbols associated with them, or experiencing unusual patterns that continually bring the person back into awareness. Jung did not argue that every coincidence carries hidden meaning. Instead, he suggested that certain events become significant because they correspond to psychological processes unfolding within the unconscious. The unconscious mind constantly seeks ways to communicate with conscious awareness. Unlike the rational mind, it does not speak through logical arguments. It communicates through symbols, dreams, emotions, and sometimes through experiences that seem mysteriously connected. When a person occupies an important place within the psyche, the unconscious may become highly sensitive to anything associated with that individual. This heightened sensitivity can make synchronicities appear more frequently. A name suddenly appears in unexpected places. A song connected to a meaningful memory begins playing repeatedly. Conversations, books, or random encounters seem to echo the same themes linked to the connection. While skeptics may view these experiences as selective attention, Jung believed they could reveal the operation of deeper psychological patterns. The important question is not whether the coincidence proves a particular outcome, but why it feels emotionally significant. Meaningful coincidences often emerge during periods of psychological transition. They tend to appear when an individual is confronting important emotional questions, unresolved conflicts, or major life changes. The unconscious uses symbols to draw attention toward issues that require deeper reflection. When thoughts repeatedly return to a specific person, synchronicities may act as reminders that the connection has become part of a larger process of inner development. The danger lies in interpreting every synchronicity as a prediction or guarantee. Jung warned against reducing these experiences to simple signs about the future. Their value lies in their ability to illuminate unconscious material rather than provide certainty about external events. They invite reflection rather than unquestioning belief. In many cases, synchronicities reveal that a connection has psychological importance because it activates deeper layers of the self. The repeated patterns encourage greater awareness of emotions, desires, fears, and unresolved questions. They function like signals from the unconscious, directing attention toward areas of life that demand understanding. Whether the connection ultimately leads to closeness or remains distant, the synchronicities surrounding it often point toward personal growth, expanded consciousness, emotional insight, symbolic meaning, and a deeper encounter with the hidden dimensions of the psyche. Carl Jung regarded the shadow as one of the most important and least understood aspects of human psychology. The shadow consists of all the qualities, emotions, desires, fears, and tendencies that a person rejects, suppresses, or refuses to acknowledge within themselves. These hidden elements do not disappear simply because they are ignored. Instead, they remain active within the unconscious, influencing behavior, emotions, perceptions, and relationships from behind the scenes. When a connection feels unusually powerful or unforgettable, the shadow often plays a significant role in shaping the experience. Many people believe that obstacles in relationships come primarily from external circumstances. Jung suggested that some of the strongest barriers originate within the psyche itself. A meaningful connection can bring hidden aspects of the shadow closer to conscious awareness. The individual may suddenly experience emotions that seem disproportionate to the situation. Fear, jealousy, insecurity, possessiveness, anxiety, or self-doubt may emerge with unexpected intensity. These reactions are often signs that the relationship has activated psychological material that was previously concealed. The shadow contains not only negative qualities but also positive potentials that have never been fully developed. A person who has spent years suppressing vulnerability may find themselves overwhelmed by emotional openness. Someone who has hidden their need for affection may discover an unexpected longing for closeness. A person who prides themselves on independence may confront a deep desire for connection that challenges their self-image. Because these qualities conflict with the identity the individual has constructed, the shadow resists their acceptance. This resistance frequently creates distance. The closer a relationship comes to exposing hidden fears or unmet emotional needs, the stronger the unconscious urge may become to withdraw, avoid, or create barriers. The individual may not understand why they hesitate despite strong feelings. Consciously, they may desire closeness, yet unconsciously, they fear what that closeness could reveal about themselves. The connection becomes threatening not because of the other person, but because it forces an encounter with parts of the psyche that have long remained hidden. Jung believed that genuine psychological growth requires shadow integration. This means recognizing and accepting the denied aspects of oneself rather than projecting them onto others. When shadow material remains unconscious, it often distorts relationships through misunderstanding, unrealistic expectations, emotional reactions, and internal conflict. The individual may blame circumstances or other people without realizing that much of the struggle originates from unresolved psychological dynamics. As awareness increases, the shadow gradually loses its power to control behavior from behind the scenes. The fears, insecurities, and hidden desires that once created distance become easier to understand and manage. The relationship then serves as a mirror, revealing important truths about the self, exposing unconscious patterns, challenging limiting beliefs, uncovering emotional wounds, awakening dormant strengths, and encouraging a deeper process of psychological integration and self-awareness. Carl Jung believed that the deepest purpose of human development is not the pursuit of perfection, but the achievement of wholeness. Throughout life, people often become divided within themselves. Certain emotions are accepted while others are rejected. Some desires are expressed openly while others are hidden. Parts of the personality that fit social expectations are embraced, while qualities that seem uncomfortable, vulnerable, or threatening are pushed into the unconscious. This fragmentation creates an inner conflict that affects thoughts, emotions, decisions, and relationships. According to Jung, true connection with another person becomes possible only when an individual begins healing this inner division. Many people search for completion through relationships. They hope another person will provide the happiness, security, understanding, or sense of purpose they feel is missing. While relationships can certainly enrich life, Jung argued that expecting another person to complete what has been neglected within oneself creates dependency and unrealistic expectations. The unconscious often projects these unmet needs onto others, transforming them into symbols of fulfillment. As a result, the connection may feel extraordinarily intense, but it also becomes vulnerable to disappointment because the burden placed upon it is too great. Inner fragmentation frequently reveals itself through emotional instability. One part of the psyche seeks closeness, while another fears vulnerability. One side desires intimacy, while another protects old wounds. These opposing forces create confusion and inconsistency. A person may feel deeply connected one moment and emotionally withdrawn the next. Such contradictions are often signs that different aspects of the personality have not yet been integrated into a harmonious whole. Jung's process of individuation addresses this challenge. Individuation involves bringing unconscious contents into conscious awareness and accepting them as legitimate parts of the self. The shadow is acknowledged rather than denied. Hidden strengths are developed rather than ignored. Emotional wounds are understood rather than avoided. Through this gradual process, the personality becomes more balanced and unified. As integration occurs, relationships begin to change. The need to project unconscious desires onto another person decreases. Attraction remains, affection remains, and emotional significance remains, but they are no longer driven primarily by psychological lack. The individual becomes capable of seeing the other person more clearly, without excessive idealization or unrealistic expectations. Love becomes less about filling an internal void and more about sharing life from a position of greater self-awareness. Jung believed that wholeness creates the foundation for authentic connection because it reduces the distortions produced by fear, projection, and unconscious conflict. The more a person understands themselves, the less they are controlled by hidden psychological forces. Emotional bonds become healthier because they are rooted in reality rather than unconscious compensation. Genuine closeness emerges not from seeking rescue or completion, but from bringing an integrated, conscious, emotionally mature, and psychologically balanced self into the experience of connection.